Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Elon Musk is one of the most powerful men in the world. A billionaire, a free speech champion, and to his critics, a far-right rabble-rouser. But for someone so public, there's one part of his life that's less well known.
So he told people that Elon Musk had put private investigators on him.
From Tortoise, this is Elon's Spies, a journey into Musk's private world. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and follow the feed to make sure you don't miss an episode.
Mark Lombardi is the happiest he's been for a while. This is his party, a gathering of his closest family and friends.
No place you can come by.
He's lit his 5th cigarette of the hour, enjoying the attention of his inner circle. He's feeling confident. For Mark, life can get intense, a claustrophobic and private battle that he hides. But right now, he's good. He's in his element even. He's chatting to a friend, something about a project he's working on. Excited as usual, talking nonstop. When someone catches his eye,
Not Chicago, but
he stops mid-sentence, smiles. His glasses slip down the bridge of his nose. Across the room is a striking woman, delicate like a doll, a pretty face framed by blonde curls. Mark's eyes are locked on her. When the woman smiles back, she lifts her drink to her lips. She doesn't look away. It's flirtatious.
sorry about that.
Her name is Barlow, a quiet southern woman. In fact, it's hard to miss her, hard to look away.
I'm sorry.
And she is Mark's new wife. This is Mark and Day's wedding reception. Mark, the intrepid researcher, has finally met his match. A Southern belle who also happens to be an ambitious advertising executive, embodying the inner resilience and steadiness Lombardi relies on to stay balanced. A union of two remarkable people. A meeting of minds, of esoteric intellect and whip-smart shrewdness. A feeling of optimism imbues Mark. There's a question of what if, but it doesn't scare him. It fills him with excitement. His destiny is right there for the taking, at his fingertips. To Mark, Day is a catalyst to his unstoppable success.
Mark was so fascinating that it was always entertaining being with him.
I rarely saw one without the other and that kind of thing. Mark was always upbeat, enthusiastic, trying to figure out what he was going to do next. It was heady times.
The energy that day reflects the ambition and confidence of a new era for Mark. The drinks flow. The wedding guests, artists, curators, writers start to let loose.
The only bad thing was that Day had too much champagne.
My feeling at the time was, this is a bad omen.
This is The Illuminator, Art, Conspiracy, and Madness. The story of conceptual artist Mark Lombardi's rise to fame, whose brilliant genius had devastating consequences. I'm Akko Mitchell, and this is episode 3, A Whole Other Life. It is a bright Saturday, March 22nd, 1980, and Mark and Day are getting married in a private ceremony that only their family attends. Their choice of venue is unconventional. The iconic Rothko Chapel, a non-denominational church in Houston. It's distinct, not so much a church, but a major work of modern art. Completed in 1971, its architect, the chapel's namesake Mark Rothko, never lived to see its sparse beauty in full, having died by suicide a year earlier. On the chapel's walls are 14 massive paintings, floor-to-ceiling Rothkos. They're all black, varying shades of black. The paintings are thrown into even sharper severity against Day's vivid white wedding dress. Afterwards, the newlyweds make their way over to the wedding reception in a bicycle-drawn rickshaw to celebrate with their friends. It takes place at the office of their architect friend, Kathy Hurd.
We did it on the shoestring budget, and it was a glorious place to have events like their wedding reception, because it was a big open space.
Mark feels limitless. Day looks a picture.
She was absolutely gorgeous and probably wore a size 2. Very thin and attractive. Curly blonde hair. Very, very attractive.
Everyone drinks far too much, Day in particular, something to calm her nerves. When she sits down at the piano to play a duet with the couple's journalist friend, Igor Alexander, he realizes something isn't quite right.
And then she turned to me, and her expression changed. And she put her hand over her mouth and then threw up. My feeling at the time was, this is a bad omen. If the bride throws up at the wedding, this marriage may not last.
Their friends laugh it off.
Luckily, it didn't land on me.
The party goes on into the early hours.
They ended up missing their connection for the train to go on their honeymoon in Mexico.
They've overslept. Day's upset, but Mark comes up with a plan, thanks to his friend Michael Hollis, an artist and colleague at the Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston. They'd both done the same grunt work together to keep things going, mopping floors, hanging paintings.
I called him to congratulate him and say, I'm sorry that I wasn't at your wedding reception or whatever, but Kristen and I are on a ski trip.
Michael invites Mark and Day to join them in Aspen, a substitute honeymoon, and the guys get to hang out.
I didn't think that Mark was going to take me up on it, but he called back and said, we'll be there tomorrow.
For some newlyweds, the idyllic setting and the charm of a serendipitous last-minute honeymoon would be enough. And it is, at least for Mark.
But Mark was like a pig in shit. He was happy. Everybody else was kind of miffed.
Two couples squashed in one small room with just a screen separating them. Mark and Day have to sleep on a pull-out sofa.
You know, it was just kind of awkward. They argued, I heard them argue about it. She was just really unhappy. She had planned on a vacation at the beach, and that was the total opposite. She was pissed the whole time.
I was never thoroughly satisfied with it. Was searching for...
Mark has had a string of jobs by now, and in the fast-fading shadow of his wedding, his mood starts to falter. The setbacks, notably his abrupt exit from the Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston, and later the failure of his 2 galleries, hurt his finances and his ego.
I was searching for...
Envy of other people's success reveals a more unsettling insecurity within him. What is he searching for, and why?
I kind of got the feeling he had either gotten a little deeper into what he was doing and kind of alienated himself from a lot of his friends.
New job, new friend. Artist Billy Hassel. He gets to know Mark at Meredith Long and Company, an upscale art gallery in downtown Houston where he's just started working. But with a taste for fringe politics and the underdog, Mark's stubborn rebelliousness clashes wildly with the family business whose intimate gallery rooms evoke old money.
I think there was probably more going on there between him and Meredith, some sort of tug of war, some tension going on.
The more Meredith Long and Co. push Mark to fit their formal, stuffy mold, the harder Mark pushes back. Quickly, he runs into trouble.
One time, he was asked to clean up the frame shop. He took everything that he could get his hands on and put it in the dumpster behind the building. And there were frames from the 19th century in the dumpster. And I was fishing them out of the dumpster to take them home because I thought they were legitimate trash. He might have been a little bit more of a troublemaker than I realized at the time.
It's Mark's renegade spirit that drives him. His inability to let go of even the smallest things propels an all-consuming fixation with power and corruption. Banks, politics, people.
I think there was this sort of intensity lurking just below the surface with him.
Mark doesn't reveal exactly what he's doing, but his behavior, increasingly secretive, agitated, suggests the signs of someone troubled, preoccupied by something, someone losing a grip on themselves. One night, Billy's heading back with Mark after a late night drinking. Mark's driving. He always insists on driving.
I thought we were going home, and he dropped me off and asked me if I had any money left in my wallet because he was going back out. He wasn't ready. The night wasn't over for him, and he was out of money, so he took whatever I had in my wallet. And I guess I'm sure he paid me back, but I think he had a bit of a wild streak that he kept sort of restrained.
Mark's intensity spills over not just into his work, but his personal life too. His marriage strains under the weight of his secret obsession with fame and success. Day, like some of Mark's friends, struggles to understand him.
Just had a real kind of southern gentleness about her. But Mark could be incredibly aggressive.
The couple, who do not have children, spend much of their time pursuing their own interests. Right from the beginning, the relationship seemed unusual.
They were very cordial, and they kind of seemed to almost have parallel lives. I think the only way I can describe it is their house, for example, didn't look really lived in. There were rooms that were furnished, but really minimally, and they're just, I don't know, there was just a kind of a coldness.
When Mark's friends meet him, he seems volatile, his moods erratic.
He and I used to go play tennis occasionally, and on the tennis court, he was incredibly aggressive. I mean, it was like this other side of him came out, and it was almost scary. He was a vicious opponent. And then after the game was over, he'd be back to his, jovial self.
At some of his lowest moments, it's as if his friends cannot reach him, can't relate to what he's feeling.
His life was not easy for him, I think, internally. He never showed that.
I was finding it more and more difficult to communicate with Mark. Like he was kind of obsessing about these things that he was involved in researching.
And this is my way of coping with it, of dealing with it, of visualizing the connections that I think have some power and influence in really even daily affairs through politics and finance and all this other stuff.
But there's a use for his frenetic energy. A once-in-a-lifetime artistic exploration, digging into connections so deeply hidden that, as far as we can tell, Only federal agents were searching in the same place. We'll be back after this short break.
We're supposed to learn from our own mistakes, but other people's errors can be instructive too. From efforts to control the weather that went disastrously awry, to the untimely death of the Segway boss, history is a treasure trove of mishaps and meltdowns that can teach us all. I'm Tim Harford, host of Cautionary Tales, the podcast that mines the greatest fiascos of the past for their most valuable lessons. Listen to Cautionary Tales wherever you get your podcasts.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
More rip-offs. The savings and loan scandal could cost $500 billion. But in Washington, the big question still is, who gets the blame?
The Iran-Contra scandal transfixed Washington for most of 1987 and renewed a struggle as old as the Republic between the president and Congress.
2 of the biggest stories of the 80s and 90s. The savings and loans debacle when 1,000 institutions collapsed in an implosion of reckless investments. And the Iran-Contra affair, a secret U.S. arms deal where White House officials traded missiles with Iran to free Americans held hostage in Lebanon.
We will not rest until the cheats and the chiselers and the charlatans spend a large chunk of their lives behind the bars of a federal prison.
It's these stories that become the catalyst for all Mark's drawings.
Savings alone lost something on the order of $2 billion because of the mismanagement, theft, and outright larceny that went on there.
He found his style accidentally. A friend of his, who he spoke to often on the phone, was describing the machinations and the networks behind the SNL scandal. And Mark, he found this interesting. And so he started to make these little diagrams, like almost on napkins, trying to understand who the players were and what their relationships were to each other.
Devin Golden, artist and unofficial dealer of Mark's work later in life, witnesses his friend's transformation from a skittish, misguided genius into a disciple in pursuit of the facts.
There's something about the clarity of his work where everybody knows that there's weird shit going on, but when he did a drawing, you would see, oh, so George H.W. Bush used Palmer National Bank was the bank that was the money launderers for Iran-Contra. You just suddenly started to understand the world in a way that I think most people found thrilling.
An investigator so dedicated that he's kept awake for days on end, smoking, talking to himself, and scribbling on some 14,000 pink and green index cards. But Mark illuminates relationships, bringing attention to the pervasive influence of dirty money and power on world politics. But he never explains or concludes a thing. Instead, his drawings ask the audience to dig deeper, to evidence the connections themselves.
This seemed to be appropriate and an effective way for me to convey the information.
A lot of Mark's work during this period, however, never makes it to an audience, and Mark would never reveal it.
He played his hands, close to his chest, as they say. He didn't share a lot.
Not even to his wife. Living dual lives, Day was running out of patience for Mark's fractured working habits, his inability to hold down a steady job. Jim Holland, who Mark worked with at Meredith Long, sized up the fault line in the marriage straight away.
I don't think she liked it. She didn't approve. She thought he was wasting his time, on a rinky-dink gallery somewhere, not making any money, and wasn't on the career path that maybe, I don't know what they talked about. But, he was always in art, as far as I knew, so at least for 5 or 6 years. She had to know that's what he wanted.
Resentment begins to grow. Communication starts to break down. The more Mark withdraws into himself, the more the relationship suffers. His friends, like Devin, try to help.
I think he was very depressed and had issues that I used to blame it on Texas because he wasn't seeing a shrink. I'm like, only someone from Texas would have problems like that and not go see a shrink. Like, it's New York. Everybody has 3 shrinks. Why wouldn't you go see a shrink if you're depressed? But he didn't. He never saw one.
Mark was hiding a momentous struggle with what some of his close friends and family now realize may have been bipolar disorder. But there was something else to this, something beyond an internal battle. Mark was in a new arena, one closer to politics than art.
I feel like he had a whole other life that I'm not sure anyone really knew about. There was a lot about Mark that was a mystery.
Mark swears his drawings were based on links using publicly available information, books, newspaper articles, journal entries. But it turns out he was using more than just written information. He was speaking to people, using covert sources to make connections that hark back to both the Iran-Contra affair and eventually BCCI. One of these people was Sissy Farenthold, a highly influential Texan politician for whom Mark was allegedly a private investigator. An attorney and progressive activist, Sissy discovered in Mark a special skill, the ability to investigate using publicly available information, not ever realizing he was an artist.
Sissy was a kind of a gadfly in that she sponsored events all the time.
But Sissy played an important role for Mark. She connected him to the former mayor of Houston, a real estate developer named Bill White, whose connection was even more vital. It led Mark straight to the Bush family.
Mark was making a series of drawings that basically outlined relationships, and she felt that some of the work that he was doing was germane to the people that were attacking me.
Bill is referring to James R. Bath, a close associate of the Bush family, who he was in business with in Houston. Though the two did well together, the partnership fell apart quickly when Bath suddenly asked to borrow money.
So he came down to our company, called me into the conference room, and said, "Bill, we have a problem."
James reveals he has been having an affair and used funds from their joint bank account to pay for the woman's house, a pool, and the setup of a childcare company.
And I said, "How much are we talking about?" $550,000. And I said, "How in God's name did you spend over $500,000 on the girlfriend?"
It leads to a wormhole of financial problems, and the men enter into a bitter feud, resulting in multiple lawsuits against each other.
I needed lawyers to represent me on a contingency fee basis because I had 4 criminal charges and 28 civil lawsuits filed against myself and my companies.
Bill wants to get the dirt on his former partner. He claims Bath was involved in shady financial dealings, namely as a frontman for the CIA, a go-between for Saudi investors in the U.S., including a connection to Salam bin Laden, the half-brother of Osama bin Laden. Names that would later end up on Mark's greatest work on BCCI Bank.
The Saudis were funneling money. They were basically providing matching funds for the CIA to support the Mujahideen fighting in Afghanistan against the Soviets.
For years, these claims were never definitively proven, until in 2018, the U.S. State Department declassified a document showing that Prince Turki Al-Faisal, the Saudi spy chief, had offered to match the CIA spending dollar for dollar.
Yeah, those relationships were on Mark's drawings. One of his charts, I just commented on what he had done and said, well, yeah, I think you left out some players here who were connected, who I knew, and he would go off and research it and maybe make modifications to his chart and come back and we'd discuss it further.
Mark may be moonlighting as a private investigator, but it's as much for his own benefit as it is Bill's. One day, Mark calls a lawyer in Los Angeles to obtain information on a key middleman of the Iran-Contra affair.
People periodically ask me if I have spoken with a person named Mark Lombardi. I think I've only had one conversation with him.
Lawyer Leonard Gumpert, whose specialty is financial fraud and government corruption.
He did not introduce himself to me as an artist.
Gumpert can hear shuffling on the other end of the line. The man has very specific questions.
The person asked me to explain a financial transaction. And I did tell him what any number of bankruptcy lawyers would have told him to help him understand the transaction clearly.
Gumpert instructs him to grab a pen and paper. A few seconds later, the man says he's ready.
Draw some boxes, and each box would be a person or a bank account. And to draw arrows from connecting one box to the other. And that would illustrate the flow of funds among the people and or the bank accounts.
Instantly, Gumpert can hear pencil scratching over the line.
As bankruptcy practitioners know, a question that's frequently asked is what happened to the money? Where did the money go?
That conversation leads to the technique, which becomes the foundation of Mark Lombardi's oeuvre.
I feel like I'm, so to speak, borrowing or pillaging part of the corporate vocabulary. Diagrams and charts are very common in business, law, whatnot. People use them to visualize deals, information. They're very expansive. Can I take a break for a minute?
Coming up on the next episode of The Illuminator.
The idea that someone could simply ask for a work of art to be removed from a gallery, to me, would only be if it was a function of danger, immediate danger to the public. It suggested that he had touched a nerve, obviously, and that at a time when, as today, the FBI is deeply connected to corridors of unseen power, I assumed that there was someone in the tradition of J. Edgar Hoover who was obsessed and worried about how a creative person could create harm in the United States by simply expressing themselves.
The Illuminator is a production of Brazen. It's hosted by me, Akko Mitchell. Farah Halim is the showrunner and scriptwriter. Zuben Kim is the reporter and associate producer. Megan Dean and Charlie Barlow are story editors. Ian Chambers is senior producer, sound designer, and composer. Claire Urbarn is the production manager. Mariangel Gonzalez is senior producer and project manager. Ryan Ho is creative director, and Julien Pradier is the cover art designer. Additional design by Andrea Claridge. Lucy Woods is head of research, and Arnav Benaikia is fact checker. Bradley Hope and Tom Wright are executive producers. Mark Lombardi interview excerpts are sourced from the Andy Mann Video Archive, courtesy of media arts organization Aurora Picture Show. Subscribe to Brazen Plus to listen to ad-free episodes. For other amazing stories, please follow us on Instagram at brazen.fm, on X at brazenfm, or go to our website, brazen.fm.